Well, when I was at college, a tutor on the printmaking department knew that I was interested in art restoration and, you know, sculpture restoration and what have you. So he knew Jenny at Nimbus, and she offered me a 2-week placement to help out on the restoration, which was already underway. And then after that point, I stayed on for the rest of the summer because I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I just turned it into a summer job.
And what were the tools that you were actually using to clean the stonework?
Well, basically, we had a bucket of water with a little bit of cleaning detergent in it, a sponge and a toothbrush. And it was pretty manual work. You know, it wasn't hard work, but it was laborious, as in you got your sponge, wetted the stone, scrubbed it with the toothbrush and washed off the dirt. And it did come off quite easily. Probably took a couple of scrubs with the toothbrush. But then the difference between the bit that you'd cleaned and the bit that you hadn't was just incredible. You know, the colour changed completely from black to the lovely yellow stone that we have now.
And if you were to describe the state of the stonework when you found it, when you began working on it, you began cleaning it, how would you describe it, and how would it come to be in that state?
Well, it was completely black, covered in cobwebs, from years and years of candle smoke, and yeah, it was absolutely filthy. A good thick layer of dust and cobwebs on every vertical surface, and it took a good deal of hoovering to get all that off, and then you'd have to give it a good scrub with the brush. So it really looked like it was hundreds of years worth of dirt.
What would have happened if you hadn't done that cleaning? Was the stonework being damaged because it was so dirty?
I think in parts, yeah, when you took off some of the really bad layers, especially at the top where all the smoke would go, you could see it was being eaten away. So yeah, I think it would have eventually damaged. I think there were parts that had to be replaced, as I recall, because they were so damaged. But most of the time, the stonework was pretty intact. I mean, it's stone, so it will last if it's not exposed to the elements. There were definitely parts of the stone that were dirtier than others. So if you felt it wasn't coming off, then you would call, somebody else over, and they might apply what we called a poultice, which would be, I don't know what was in it, but a mixture of slightly stronger chemicals or what have you to actually get the dirt off, because a lot of it, where it had, I suppose, started to eat into the stone, it wasn't going to come off just by scrubbing with a toothbrush.
We've got a picture of your friend Lucy cleaning some of the mouldings in the North Transept. Can you just describe what Lucy's doing in this picture, please?
Well, at this point, she's cleaning out all of the mouldings to uncover green paint underneath. And in the more delicate mouldings, we used a poultice, which was like a mixture, like a paste that you paint on. And then you pack in plastic into the poultice, leave it for a while so it heats up. I mean, it was hot up there anyway because it was, high summer, but the plastic seals in the poultice, stops it drying out, heats it up, and then you can peel it away and you're left with the stone and the paintwork underneath. So she would have then, by the looks of it, been cleaning all that off and then uncovering the paintwork and the mouldings that were left.
And she's cleaning that poultice off again with the toothbrush there again?
I think probably just wiping that off with water, and then any stubborn areas or any, areas where you couldn't quite get to, or the poultice hadn't removed, then she'd use a toothbrush just to clean it all up. The sills of the windows, because if you imagine dust and dirt would settle on those surfaces, needed quite a lot of extra work to restore them. So there's one there of, this thick paste being applied that would then take off more of the dirt than if you'd just scrubbed it by hand.
And the person is putting on this poultice, it looks like with their hands. Was that how it was applied?
Yeah, I think so. Whether it was spread over by hand or using some tool or other, but I think mostly by hand by the looks of it, because you can, it's not like a uniform. It was just a paste, almost like a porridge, that you just smear over. with your gloves on, and then leave for a certain amount of time with the plastic on top to let it get to work, and then clean it off again. But yeah, it was a pretty sort of basic hands-on process. There was no machinery involved or anything.
And do you remember anything particularly unusual that happened on any of those days at the Abbey that stand out for you, that really mark them as a day that you remember?
I remember the day when we found the carving of the stonemason up at the top, and then when we found the shells. We also uncovered right above, I guess where the altar is, a rainbow that was painted on over the top right at the top of the vault, where the arch meets in the middle above the window. And that was a big moment, because everyone sort of suspected that various bits and bobs would be up there and there'd be painted areas, because you could see that there was going to be some, painting and coloured parts up there. But this was something that they had no idea was there. And I believe it's quite rare that there's a rainbow found over this type of church. I can't quite remember, but I remember, when they uncovered that, it was quite a special moment. So the whole team went up to have a look, and then there was some inscriptions found on the stonework as well. So that was quite a big day. There's a couple of photos showing the very top of the east window, and I've talked about the rainbow that we uncovered and then was subsequently restored. And you can see that in quite a lot of detail in these. So I remember that being a very special moment when we found that. And there's a close-up there of the detail of the gilding, where they would have, restored the paintwork and then gold-leafed over the top. That would be a process where you'd have to paint on a glue, and then the gold leaf comes on tiny, thin strips of paper. It's really, really thin, the gold leaf, and if you took it off the paper, it would just fly away. It's just so light. You'd put the glue on, and then you'd press on, almost like a transfer. So you'd press on the paper, and the gold would stick to the glue. And then you take away the paper, and then you can just brush it in so it sticks properly to all the areas of glue and all the areas of stone with a dry brush, so it will go into all the cracks, and then it will stay. And when you gild things, I have a feeling you put on a coat of red paint first, so then the gold shines through with a sort of richer tone than if you just put gold onto like a white surface. So I know that you do generally put red on and then you gild over the top.
And how does it feel seeing this picture after all these years of you working on the cleaning of the Abbey?
Oh, I can remember being up there and the sights and smells and sounds and things that were there.
Can you just describe the stonework for us and how it smelt when it was being cleaned, please?
Yeah, it was like, when you're outside on a nice day and then you get a thunderstorm, and just the smell of the pavements and the roads, that's what it smelled like. So you can, imagine that it was obviously after the cleaning process, so after it had been wet. When you were up there before, it didn't smell of anything, but as soon as you washed it, it did smell like, rain on stone. Yeah, I can remember it very well. And I think the stonework had a very distinctive smell once it had been cleaned. That and being permanently wet through the whole time, I think, are probably the main things I can remember.